reading out of the CRCM prep book, and I'm in disclosure of CRA related agreements, CRA Sunshine Regulation G. I never heard of this. In 1999, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, Congress legislated that banks and community programs must make public the full text of any CRA settlements involving a payment of more than $10,000 or loans in excess of $50,000. The purpose of these regulations is to allow residents in a community to assess the CRA performance of financial institutions as well as the community groups that claim to represent them. Regulations to implement the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act requirements were issued by the regulatory agencies in 2001. Coverage. Persons covered. Any of the following entities that enters into a covered agreement: depository institutions, non-governmental entities or persons, and affiliates of depository institutions. Covered agreement must be in writing. Parties must include one or more depository institutions or affiliate and one or more NGEPs. Must provide for the depository institution or affiliate to provide to one or more individuals or entities cash payments, grants, or other consideration, except loans that have aggregate value of more than $10,000 in any calendar year, or make to one or more individuals or entities loans that have an aggregate principal amount of more than $50,000 in any calendar year. Must be in fulfillment of CRA. Is Part 4 under covered agreement. Items that demonstrate fulfillment of CRA include comments to a federal banking agency or that are included in a CRA public file. Performing any of the following activities if the activity is of the type likely to receive favorable CRA consideration by a federal banking agency: home purchase, home improvement, small business, small farm, home development, and consumer lending. Making investments, deposits, or grants that have community development as the primary purpose. Delivering retail banking services, providing community development services, community development lending, including originating and purchasing loan in the case of a wholesale or limited purpose bank, and any lending or other activity for evaluating small banks lending tests, and any element of a strategic plan in the case of a bank evaluated on the basis of a strategic plan. 5. Must be with an NGEP that has had a CRA communication before entering into the agreement. CRA communication is any written, oral comment or testimony provided to a federal banking agency concerned with the adequacy of the performance under CRA of the bank, any affiliate of the bank, or any CRA affiliate. Any written comment submitted to the bank that discusses the adequacy of the performance under CRA of the bank and must be included in the bank's CRA public file. Any discussion or other contact with the bank or any affiliate about providing or refraining from providing oral or written comments to the bank's regulatory agency about the bank's CRA performance. B. Providing or refraining from providing written comments to the bank about a bank's CRA performance that must be included in the bank's CRA public file, or the adequacy of the bank's or any of its affiliates' performance under CRA. Communication is not considered CRA communication. If it was with this communication we're referencing, if it was with a regulatory agency and occurred more than 3 years before the agreement, if it was written communication to the bank and occurred more than 3 years before the agreement, if it was oral agreement in which an NGEP discusses providing comments or testimony to a banking agency and occurred more than 3 years before the agreement, and if it occurred more than 1 year before the agreement in the case of any other oral communication. C. The bank must have knowledge of the communication for it to be a CRA communication. The bank is considered to have knowledge only when the following parties have knowledge: A bank employee who approves, directs, authorizes, or negotiates the agreement with the NGEP, or a bank employee designated with responsibility for compliance with CRA, or an executive officer if he or she knows that the bank is negotiating, intends to negotiate, or has been informed by the NGEP that it expects to request the bank negotiate an agreement with the NGEP. A bank is deemed to have knowledge of any testimony provided to a federal banking agency at a public hearing, any comment submitted to a federal agency that is conveyed in writing by the agency of the bank, and any written comment sent to the bank that is included in CRA public file. 6. Covered agreements do not include any individual loan secured by real estate. Moving on to page 866. Any specific contract or commitment for a loan to extension of credit to I. The funds are loaned at rates that are not substantially below market credit to an individual or business, firm, or other entity if I. The funds are loaned at rates that are not substantially below market rates, and 2. The loan application or other loan documentation does not indicate the borrower intends to use the funds to make a loan to a third party. And 7. If an agreement covers loans that would be exempt if documented separately, the loan may be excluded from computer's going slow. For purposes of determining whether an agreement is a covered agreement. 8. If an agreement is a multi-year agreement but with no written schedule of disbursements, the amount of the entire agreement will be deemed to be the value of the first year for purposes of considering whether it is covered. Related agreements. All written agreements to which the bank or an affiliate is a party will be considered to be a single agreement if they are entitled into with the name NGEP, were entered into within the same 12-month period, and are each in fulfillment of CRA. B. All written contracts to which a bank or affiliate is a party will be considered to be a single agreement without regard to whether the other parties are the same or whether each is in fulfillment of CRA if the contracts were negotiated in a coordinated fashion and an NGEP is a party to each. Next are the requirements section under this administrative CRA reg. I don't even know what it's called because it's so unusual. Requirements are the disclosure of covered agreements. Each NGEP and each bank or affiliate that enters into a covered agreement must promptly make a copy of the covered agreement available to an individual or entity on request. In responding to a request for a covered agreement from an individual or entity at NGEP, bank, or affiliate may hold confidentiality or proprietary information that the party believes is relevant. Supervisory agency could withhold under the Freedom of Information Act. The party must disclose the names and address of the parties to the agreement, the amount of any payments, fees, loans, or other considerations to be made or provided by any agency. C. Any description of how the funds or other resources are to be used. D. The term of the agreement. And E. Any other information the relevant supervisory agency determines is not properly exempt from public disclosure. Requests for agency review. Number 4, under disclosure of covered agreements. Any person may request that a relevant supervisory agency review whether any information in a covered agreement withheld by a party must be disclosed. 5. The obligation to disclose a covered agreement to the public terminates 12 months after the end of the term of the agreement. Moving on to page 867. Banks may fulfill their disclosure obligations by placing a copy of the agreement in the bank's CRA public file. NGEPs must send a copy of the agreement to the relevant supervisor agency within 30 days of receiving a request from the agency. If the NGEP proposes to withhold some of the information in the agreement, it must send a public version of the agreement also. The obligation for the NGEP to send an agreement terminates 12 months after the end of the term of the agreement. Within 60 days of the end of each calendar quarter, banks must provide each relevant supervisory agency with a complete copy of the covered agreement entered into during that calendar quarter. If the bank plans to withhold some information in covered agreement, a public version must also be sent, or a list of all covered agreements entered into by the bank or affiliate during the quarter that contains I. the name and address of each NGEP that is a party to the agreement, 2. the date of the agreement, 3. the estimate total value of the payments, loans, fees, or other consideration to be provided by the institution or any affiliate, and 4. the date the agreement terminates. 9. If the relevant supervisory agency requests a copy of the agreement, the bank must send it within 7 calendar days. 10. The bank's obligation to send agreements with regulatory agencies terminates 36 months after the end of the term of the agreement. 11. An agreement without a certain termination date is deemed to expire the last day any party makes payment or provides a loan under the agreement. Annual report. Each NGEP and bank or affiliate that is a party to a covered agreement entered into on or after May 12, 2000 must file an annual report with each relevant supervisory agency concerning disbursement, receipt, and uses of funds or other resources under the covered agreement. NGEPs must file an annual report for any fiscal year in which the NGEP receives or uses funds or other resources under the agreement. The report must include the name and address of the NGEP, information sufficient to identify the agreement for which the report is being filed, such as names of the parties, C. the amount of funds received during the fiscal year, and D. a detailed itemized list of how any funds were used, including the total used for compensation of officers, directors, and employees, administrative expense, travel expense, entertainment expenses, payment of consulting and professional fees, and other expenses must specify, that is. Now we're moving on to 868. 3. The bank must file an annual report for any fiscal year in which the bank or affiliate provides or receives any payments, fees, or loans under the covered agreement, or has data to report on loans, investments, and services provided by a party to the covered agreement. Annual reports filed by the bank must include name and principal place of business of the bank or affiliate, B. information sufficient to identify the agreement for which the report is being filed, such as the name of the parties, C. the aggregate amount of payments made under the segment, D. the agreement amount of loans provided, and E. a general description of the terms and conditions of any payments, tax, fees, or loans. 5. Each party must file its annual report no later than 6 months following the end of the fiscal year covered by the report. I'm doubting that's the end of the requirements section. Kind of waiting for it to show up right now. Maybe not. Maybe that's the end of the entire section. Be kind of lucky. We'll know soon. Yep, that's the end of the CRA related agreements question.